Okay. Hello, Richard. Hi, how are you?
Hi, Mustafa. Good to see you.
Pleasure, pleasure. Thanks for accepting our invite to be on our podcast. Let's talk about data. And we know each other like 20 years back, but we never got a
That's right.
chance to work directly together,
hmm
right?
Yeah.
So tell us about yourself because it is your first session on our podcast. Our audience doesn't know you.
Yeah.
So let's
Yeah.
start with very basic. We will go towards a topic which is a very difficult topic to pronounce. But tell our audience about yourself, like your background and all data journey. Let's start with that. Yeah.
Oh, firstly, thanks for having me. It's always great to catch up with you. So my name is Richard Achée. I've been in the tech industry for 25 plus years, 20 plus years, 25 plus years. Um, Before I was in the tech industry, I was actually a high school English teacher for 1 year. And one of my students told me I didn't look like a teacher, I looked like a business person. So I got into business. But I've always had a passion for education, technology, of course. And I left Google after a 15-year career there. It's been part of that in Singapore. That's where we met. I was in Singapore 12 years. Prior to that, I was in Ireland for 2 years. Came back to the US with Google back in 2014. And most recently, I left to start my own business called Found42, where we help SMBs adopt AI for both their internal workflows, like running their business more efficiently and growing revenue, as well as for some companies integrating it into their products, particularly SaaS companies. So this is think like a B2B SaaS company that's been around for 10 plus years, well established, but has never had the need to really adopt AI, but now they're really taking it very seriously. And outside of that, as I said, I'm an educator at heart. Back in 2017, I created something called Breakbeat Code, which is now a nonprofit where we teach coding in computational thinking to students ages 9 and up through music. So we teach them how to write Python code to remix music tracks by popular artists like Alicia Keys and Pharrell and Common and others. Yes, we've been doing that since 2017. We've reached 55,000 students in 43 countries.
Wow.
A lot of them in APAC too. Yeah. So we've done this globally for some time. We do these like really awesome hackathons. And so that's my nonprofit. And then the for profit I also do training, but in that case I'm training adults how to adopt AI.
You're awesome. This non-profitable thing, right? I may end up connecting you with my portfolio in Pakistan
Oh
because
yeah, I love it. It's
yeah,
one of our biggest countries actually. India, the US, I think it goes US, Canada, India, Pakistan. That's the
yeah.
in
So you
terms of the
already
top four countries for our
so
students.
you already have people from Pakistan who's doing this stuff, is it?
Loads. Yeah.
Oh, is
Yeah. Yeah. Like because we the hackathons are virtual
okay.
and yeah, because we'll get like whole classrooms from Pakistan joining. Yeah, it's really awesome.
Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah, you got a culture eager to learn, you know.
Oh,
That's
yes.
all you need.
Yeah, so I'm also going into urban area over there and I'm
Mhm.
trying to get some kind of data trainings to build their basics on it. So maybe I can
Amazing.
connect that whole
Love it.
ecosystem with you as well and then
Yeah.
we can work on that. Okay, now
Yeah.
now coming back to our topic, a
Hmm.
very difficult topic we
I,
have picked up for our
I
audience. It is about agentic AI, generative AI. Is
yeah.
SaaS
Yeah.
actually dead? So tell us about
Yeah.
the topic which you have selected here.
Yeah. Yeah. So the first one, and I love this term. Yeah, it's a mouthful. The trough of disillusionment. It's the most ridiculous term ever. I didn't invent this. Let's be very clear. So the trough of disillusionment. Um, this term. It actually was coined by Gartner back in the late 90s. And basically, it means that it basically looks at this technology adoption curve. The technology adoption curve, we've all seen some version of this. And it's basically like you get like a new technology, it gets super hyped up. So you get this like curve going up. And then something happens or a series of events or realizations happen, and people start to say, maybe this is really overhyped. And then some bad things happen, like things really mess up, and you see like the expectations of whatever that technology can do really start to bottom out. So it goes into the trough of disillusionment. And then it comes back out of that, goes up the hill, and it's not doesn't quite get to that peak hype, but it gets kind of in the middle between this trough and this hype. It looks like a sine wave basically. And Gardner, like, I just found their naming of this thing was hilarious. God knows what they were doing back in the 90s to inspire them with these wacky names. But it actually describes how people deal with change. Like you go to a new city, oh my God, this place is amazing. Then like, oh my gosh, traffic's terrible. And like, what, actually, it's somewhere in between. Um, like any change in our life,
Yeah.
career, all these things. So anyway, we're going towards the trough. We're probably not in the trough with AI, right? And so you're already seeing that in the news. People are getting sick of the hype cycle. They're getting annoyed. They're We're seeing reports saying like 95% of projects aren't delivering ROI. You're seeing people saying, well, actually, like it makes all these different mistakes, which are very, very true. And so I think we're getting close. I don't think we're there yet. I think we got a ways to go. I think there's possibly going to be some, financial blowout from, a bunch of companies who are overvalued. Like, so there's a lot of speculation about an AI bubble.
Yeah.
I think there's validity in those arguments. I'm certainly not here to predict when that bubble is going to burst. But so I think that might be another catalyst for sending us all the way down to the bottom. But the peak of our hype and the bottom of our trough, it's neither of those are true, probably. It's probably somewhere in the middle. So to Gartner's point, all wacky naming conventions aside, I think they're right. I think this is the pattern with tech. And we've seen it through every major innovation, right? Kind of crazy hype, disappointment, at least our perceived perception of how good this technology is. And then we land, somewhere in the middle. And so the implications of that trough of disillusionment, is that um, there's a need to be sort of stoic about this and not get too wrapped up emotionally, and to always kind of think, like, kind of look forward to that middle between this crazy hype and the trough, and like kind of try to pick that spot where we actually think it's going to be. Because if we're planning for that versus like planning for this crazy high expectation or the crazy like low expectation. We're planning for that middle ground where, we have a technology that's actually going to be transformational for sure. It's not probably transformational yet for the vast majority of businesses, but it's going to get there. And if we're shooting for that kind of horizon, then we're going to make some much better decisions. We're also going to probably be emotionally better off because we're not getting like overexcited or like massively depressed by how this stuff plays out. Yeah, but there's great reasons to be super hyped. There are great reasons to be disappointed.
Yeah.
Hence the reason this is going to end up in somewhere in the middle, And we could talk more about that.
Yeah. So I can come up with a question on the same
Yeah,
topic, right? And this is a
sure.
very critical topic because, as you correctly mentioned, and
Mhm,
MIT also mentioned that 95% of Gen AI project failed in last couple of years, and they also actually predicted that 40% of projects is going to Gartner predicted actually
mhm,
40% of agentic AI projects are going to wipe out in
mhm,
2027. So now the
mhm.
question comes. Now the solution architect's question comes. I wear
Okay.
my solution architect cap.
Yeah.
I see there are three kind of ways to handle this situation. One is late adoption. You can
Mhm,
comment on it. I feel people do late adoption, see others to fail, right? The other way is to find out to hire in-house right people who
mhm,
really knows about the technology,
mhm,
good people in it, right? And the third one is to build digital twins. Digital
mhm.
twins, right? That you build a small ecosystem of technology which really test it out. Agentic AI, of course. So
Yep.
what do you comment on these three approaches to
Yeah.
manage every new kind of technology comes in, right?
Yeah, yeah, definitely not an either or for me. I think there's a mix of all those three. I think so. So let's just kind of go one by one. So agentic AI and late adoption. I think it starts off with like having really, really solid expectations of what this stuff can and cannot do. One thing I do where I put a lot of my energy is I train C-level executives And I'm training them on how to use things like ChatGPT for their job. Like just how do you use it to prepare for a board meeting? How do you use it as your as a sounding board for strategic decisions? And and the reason I do that, one, they walk away with something useful. Two, they start to see it fail as much as it succeeds. They see like the patterns of failure. Like firsthand, we can read about hallucinations and we can see it as consumers. But like firsthand, like where it matters, analyzing, say, an M&A transaction, and you see it hallucinate about a number and you have to like drill down. And you start to pretty quickly realize that it's almost like you're dealing with a super talented junior employee, right? Who's like came out of the best business school with like, who's like Mensa level intelligence, polymath, and then they like forget how to do basic division, like for no particular reason at some point, and you catch them like messing up. And I've seen this actually with senior executives dealing with junior employees who are super talented, and they're like, I think you're off by several decimal points, like several orders of magnitude. Do you check your like, oh yeah, actually you're right. I'm wildly off. And it's like it's not like they're incompetent. It's more like they've made a mistake. And with GenAI, the more hands-on experience you have, seeing these things fail the way they do, they're you can say they're failure modes. Then it really sets your expectations like, okay, I kind of know where I want to trust this and where I don't want to trust it. And if you start there, you're probably not even going to start many agentic AI projects at all. So I'll give you an example. Like, let's say we want to do and you see these ridiculous things on LinkedIn all the time. Like, we just wiped out $10 million worth of like labor in this global call center because we automated everything. It's like, no, you didn't. Because if you did, you've lost all your customers because it's the technology is not there yet. I think vast majority of use cases you want a human in the loop based on the current state of the art of where the technology is. Why? Because the same thing we see with hallucinations. If it's going to make stuff up, and actually there was a pretty famous case with one of the vibe coding platforms. We'll avoid the name for a minute. And they had automated their customer support completely, right? 100%, like zero human in the loop. And what was happening was that the agent, their agentic AI, state-of-the-art system, was making up support policies, and they just started losing customers. Customers were just like in droves, and it was like, and that's like one example. Another example was a wine distribution company tried to fully automate supply chain with agentic AI with no human in the loop. And then it like spotted a particular anomaly with their supply. And they realized, wow, we're really not moving this particular type of wine. We got to drop the price like 60%. And then they moved it really quickly. Turns out that wine had been aging and was extremely valuable and much
Yeah.
more so in 10 years. It's like, hey, we got some wine that's just like kind of sitting on the shelf. We got a problem. And agentic AI is just like, making very rapid, terrible decisions. And so like, if you know what these things can do, what they can't do, you're going to know like, okay, well, I can automate probably 80% of the tasks so that a human can be more efficient, but I'm not about to get that human out of the loop. And so I think of many of the agentic AI projects that they're talking about are based on like faulty assumptions on what these things can do and faulty assumptions on the human in the loop. I think people are like some C-level executives are way too enthusiastic about cutting staff, right? And we've also seen those embarrassments, right? So companies that have said like, oh, getting rid of like, a huge function or like the most common one is, outbound sales and inbound call support and things like that. And then they hire them back, right? And like they've completely destroyed their employee morale. They look ridiculous, right? Because they've made this huge announcement, they backtracked, and they spent like a lot of money, like hiring, firing, and rehiring. It's a very expensive process. And yeah, and like they wasted a ton of money based on the faulty assumption that they didn't need a human in the loop. And so that's I think that answers your first question in terms of like you got to start off with realistic expectations. The having in-house talent Absolutely. Super important to scale up your team. I wouldn't 100% rely on a third party to do everything for you because I just think generally I wouldn't do that for like many projects. I would want a balance of like highly competent person internally, highly competent partner externally for sure. Um, but what they do find is that people that try to do things completely internally at this point, they lose out on some of the successes and failures that you can gather as a consultant from different projects, right? You've seen things work and you've seen things fail, and so you bring that knowledge into your next project. And so if you have a competent consultant who has some experience that can be super valuable. So definitely those projects that fail internally, sometimes they fail because they 100% rely on their internal staff to just kind of figure it out. But you definitely want to hire some really great people internally, and you want to skill the people internally that you have. There's huge opportunity there. And then what was our third? I've lost the
I
plot on the third one.
think you covered both. First one
Yeah,
was late adoption.
late adoption. Yep,
Okay, I think you covered that or not?
yep, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and the third one was agentic AI.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So the late adoption, I think I would say the late adoption
Twin
I'd
city.
probably fully cover. Yeah, but
Digital.
basically, it's yeah, it's like choose the things that have a realistic expectation what these things can do. Choose things that you are much more confident in success, and that often means that you're doing like you don't want to just stay in pilot mode though. You do want to say like, okay, I know if I have a human in the loop. I know I can scale up my team. That's definitely going to give me some value and probably quite a lot. There are some agentic workflows that have a human in the loop. There can be certainly value there. Like if I'm doing call support, customer support, it's automatically triaging and someone's checking the work. That can have huge value. And but like I would say, late adoption for fully autonomous agents? Absolutely. For the vast majority of companies, vast majority of use cases. I would not be, like I keep coming back to it. I would not be taking that human out of the loop anytime in the near future, put it that way. Despite what all the people say about how AI is going to be super intelligent in 20 minutes. Yeah. And I'll say one last comment on this. There's a problem generally like in social media, in the media in general, like absolutes are great ways to draw attention. 100% of something's going to happen, right? So when you're saying like it's going to wipe out all jobs, or when you're going to say it's going to automate all your work, you're probably wrong, right? If someone's saying that, right? Because maybe in a long enough time frame, sure, like maybe in like 20, 30, 40, 50 years, we're talking about everything being automated. But like going back to Gardner, the Trough of Disillusionment, technology takes a while to diffuse.
Hmm.
Um, there are people, someone I was reading something the other day, but someone was talking about like autonomous cars and radiology is two great examples. Where I actually talked to someone who's like knows a lot about radiology, and I've talked to people who were in the self-driving car team at Waymo, and then they took their first ride, and they're just like, "Oh my God, like this is gonna wipe out all taxis like next year." Like that's what it felt like when they first saw it. Now it's back in like 2014. And now if you look at what's happening in San Francisco, 20% of the rides are Waymo, and they have more taxi drivers and more Uber drivers than they ever did. It's
Oh,
actually, yeah, that's the thing with that we don't know how these things play out, and people are using their cars less
oh,
because and part of it's also the novelty. But like when you drive a driverless car, you can't tell the driverless car that I'm late and I'm gonna miss the play or or and step on it. Driverless car is not gonna react to that. Give $10 to the driver, he's gonna violate some laws. So so people there's a human in the loop that that people weren't expecting that they were going to want. And they also expected that the technology is so good, right, that it was going to get there. But there's reasons why, like it takes longer to adopt, and it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to like dig into a fixed pie. The total pie could grow. In that case, the total pie of people driving in cars that were either, automated or Ubers and taxis went up. Radiology, we now have more radiologists who are being paid more money.
Yeah.
Radiology is, and so because we keep thinking of the tasks as being the job, and the tasks make up a good chunk of the job, but there could be one task, such as talking to a human, which is a great task for a radiologist and help them understand what's going on. That becomes the big reason why to keep them in the loop, plus checking the work. And so now they can have much more meaningful eye to eye empathetic conversations with other people. So, I think when we think about late adoption, setting realistic expectations and also not, and then also like, understanding that it takes a while for technology to be adopted for all sorts of different factors.
Yeah, absolutely. Touching that same discussion, actually, I think when we are talking about like how to use agentic AI and generative AI, let's bring this angle into it as well.
Yeah.
That I think last week we discussed when we were not recording that when people say they will use agentic AI to replace the human, and when we say human, it means a role, right?
Yeah.
So human is a role, right? And I
Yeah.
think a lot of people which they miss out is the role is not one thing which human do. The role has a lot of JDs in it, and
Yeah.
within JD you have a lot of tasks.
Yeah.
So within tasks, my personal belief is when you bring in agents, you ask agents to do tasks
Hmm.
rather than do a role. Because when you do a role, within roles, humans' brain is much mature, have good
Hmm.
context, have history, have
Hmm.
big memory, which generative AI and agentic AI does not have. So what do you say about that replacing task with agent rather than roles?
Yeah, exactly. I 100% agree. I mean, it's also just I was thinking about this the other day. If I think about like us right now. So right now I got a note taker. I used to take notes furiously. Like I would and I was a terrible note taker in the sense that like I would write out like longhand, full words, full sentences. But that was just how I made
Same
sure I
in
retained all the
college, we used
information.
that, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and now not only now I automated the process, obviously with note takers. I automate the process of summarizing it. I still double check it, right? So I'm still a human in the loop, but my notes are like as good as I could get them after writing, transcribing, getting them into there, right? So it eliminated the task to write notes. But the human in the loop is super important because it also will garble words and misinterpret things. Sometimes it'll say things that I want stricken from the record because someone shared confidential information. I'm not about to throw that into a note stock that I share, right? So you still want that human loop. I've eliminated tasks. Great, writing notes. And so if we just look at how we have meetings, it now it it's super it greatly increases the quality of my conversations with people.
Mhm.
It's like it by and I can't immeasurable, right? Because now I'm always present because I'm not worried about taking notes.
Mhm.
Um, and sometimes if I miss something someone said, I've got the transcription happen. And actually, that's, sort of closed caption we've had for a very long time. And I can look at that and say, like, okay, yeah, I would have missed that, right? Not that would have been distracting to have missed that, like a little bit of context. So now it's the same work. The quality of our human interaction is so much improved by eliminating some tasks that were taking our time. And now my follow-up emails, like, within an hour, not me going away and sort of like thinking way too hard about, transcribing the notes. So I think sort of look at any task or any role, any job, I mean, most people have multiple hats, right? And you can take out so much what they do, and it probably means in many roles that they can have much better conversations with people and they can be much more thoughtful about their work, right? Whereas they would have had some uh, bandwidth constraints, right? On the amount of time they could take to think through specific types of problems. So I'm planning my meeting, right? And I've got an agenda tray,
Hmm.
and I'm thinking really hard about that agenda. But then I automate the first draft. Great. Now I've got that first painful first draft out. Now I can really think hard about like, is that the right conversation we want to have? Do we have all the data that we need to have an informed conversation? And so you just spend more time, with high quality work. Just because it eliminated the task of first draft of the agenda doesn't mean it eliminated the role. And so I think there is, definitely there's certainly let's not sort of uh, beat around the bush that there are roles that will be eliminated for sure. That will definitely happen. I think I do think new jobs will be created. I think we humans lack imagination in that regard because and we've said this before about the data science was not a thing. All
Hmm.
of a sudden, data science was a thing. Data science was actually one of the best paying jobs out there in tech. All right. Data
Yeah.
science didn't even exist. SREs didn't exist. We now have the concept of a site reliability engineer. Great job in tech. Um, there's all sorts of things like that we just simply cannot imagine. So, like, back to your point, um, people's roles are more than the sum of their tasks often.
Yeah.
And um and the and actually, can we pause for a minute? I'm just gonna move into another room.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
Good.
yeah. So I think yeah, back to your point. I think I think
We can
we're
replace, we should think about customers or business should think about replacing tasks rather
yeah,
than rules. Because,
I,
a very, very good example, I was hearing this example somewhere that this agentic AI send an email to some very C level or maybe global MD level, and he used a language which you use with the associate because agentic AI doesn't know who and which lingo they have to use it to talk to or to address to who, right? That's
yeah,
an example that
yeah,
cannot let it go to do everything. Emotions are there, right? They do not know what is emotions. Humans know the emotions actually as well.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think like a really basic example is sales, right? So you take a look at a typical sales team, like I use tech sales since I'm most familiar with the tech sales process. Typical tech sales team, every Friday, they box off a huge portion of their day to clean up data in CRM. Yeah. They have to every day box off a huge portion of their day to do follow-up. They're going out and booking meetings for themselves, all that sort of thing. And now maybe they eliminate half a day work, let's say.
Yeah.
If that buys them time to have another 3, 4, 5 meetings a week, that could dramatically improve their pipeline velocity, the number of deals that they have. They could be just thinking through and making better decisions. They can take training to learn how to do their job more effectively versus doing a bunch of busy work that's really kind of getting in their way. And so I think it creates a huge opportunity to improve the quality of work. And the data certainly shows that someone with AI is going to often perform better than someone without it. And teams with AI will often perform better than an individual with AI. There's also some data showing that that are challenging some of the productivity gains, such as people that are just learning for the first time how to use you know, coding assistant tools. They are often going to be spending more time double checking the work of the agent. So it's not like it's not always going to be linear in terms of like the productivity gains. There'll be in some cases regression before we get back to being more productive.
Yeah.
But
So
yeah.
let me add an example before we jump onto the SaaS thingy. We have 20
Mhm.
minutes left. So I think this example is very important because I've been project manager as well in one of the very big migration project. So I think the biggest challenge for a project manager is to note each and everything they have discussed, everyone discussed in the meeting. You
Mhm.
remember last time there was a secretary sitting down there right behind the table and she was just noting down all those points. Then
Mhm.
PM has to do it. Then
Mhm.
people throw emails. I've seen people that who say, "Hey, I have sent you an email. You never noted down my requirement." So I used to tell them, "Hey, send me again." unfortunately or fortunately, I work with a PM in New Zealand, and he trained me that project manager job is 90% to do emailing and manage
Yeah.
your emailing more efficiently. So that stuck with my mind. So I'm
Hmm.
very good on emailing. Like if I open a Hotmail and Gmail for you, my Hotmail is clean, my Gmail is clean, my junk and spam is also clean actually on my
Hmm.
professional email. So I look into it. So I
Hmm.
think this thing can also eliminate a lot of project management tasks, and
Hmm.
you don't end up missing any requirements. So which
Yeah.
can also help you for audit and other stuff, because you
Yeah.
end up losing all this information right in the emails, somewhere in the PowerPoint, somewhere in the Excels, right? So now you
Hmm.
can track everything. You don't have to go and run and after and find out those. I think those things can be uh, replaced by agent. But let me come last spend let's spend last 15, 20 minutes on this. Is SaaS actually dead?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
So
think
this
our
came, yeah.
CEO mentioned that, right? I
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
surprised he said that, but yeah, comment on
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah. So Satya Nadella said this, and I think it was, I think it was a great example of like a really provocative statement that gets you thinking, because like, and sometimes that's a very useful conversation to have, right?
Mm,
And I think he was intentionally being provocative while actually having a very real point to make. And his provocation, his provocative statement, I think the reason he says that is like if you're not actually adopting AI, if they're a SaaS company.
mm,
Salesforce is a huge example, but like there are like most businesses are SMBs, and most SaaS companies are SMBs. And I'm not talking like a startup. These are often well-established companies. They've been around 8, 10 plus years. They have a really great loyal customer base. They do something really narrow and niche in their area of business. Maybe they do like inspections of buildings is a good example of a SaaS application. Maybe they do distribution for the cannabis industry. Maybe they only do things for doctors of small practices. Those are just a few examples.
mm,
Um, so all those, different things. And I'm thinking of some people that are sort of front of mind for me personally. And there is a huge opportunity for them to look for ways that AI can can have a game-changing positive impact on the customer experience. And the risk from what Satya Nadella is saying is that the risk is you have a competitor that comes in that is fully agentic, right? And so and he's basically saying, imagine your entire experience with a business application is very similar to you chatting, saying, instead of saying, I got to click here, navigate all these different things to finally get to the thing I want to do. And I got to think really hard about how your app works instead of thinking about the outcome I want. Versus a really good example, and I think Canva is already adapting to this. When I first saw image generation, right, in ChatGPT, I'm like, wow, that created exactly what I wanted. And I asked it to and I wasn't that good at Canva. So I downloaded that, put it into Canva. I spent way too much time in Canva trying to figure out how to remove the background to make it transparent. And I went back to ChatGPT and it made it happen. And I'm like, is it Canva's problem? It was, no, it's actually lack of user understanding of how Canva worked. Turns out it's very easy to remove a background in Canva. But if Canva was not doing what Canva's doing, which is they are embedding AI right into their product, Canva could become irrelevant. But they're adapting, right? That's a great example of a SaaS application that if they're not careful and they don't stay ahead of the curve, then why am I dealing with all the potential? Why do I have to learn that UI? But they're a great example of someone who's like ahead of the curve. There are going to be companies out there who ignore this completely, and then someone rushes into their space, and it seems like an overnight success, but it turns out this new entrant was looking at the state of the market, looking at users' experience of like the frustration of like clicking to create a dashboard, and doing like a million clicks to get the dashboard right versus give me a dashboard. I want this graph. I want this, I want this bar chart. I want this table over here. But do these filters for me, right? I want to be able to toggle this, this, and this. And all this is through a normal chat conversation. And versus someone having to spend like a huge part of their day getting really good at using that app when they have like, dozens of apps to use. So I do think that's a risk. And so calling it, but everything, it's kind of like the meme where you see on social media where it says RIP, insert the thing that's going to get disrupted, like RIP, you know, big consulting firm, RIP this, RIP that. Like it's just very, we're very much a meme culture right now. Um, it's not going to ultimately kill all SaaS. It will potentially disrupt companies that do not find the right way to integrate AI into their SaaS product. And I say the right way is because there's a risk you just kind of chase the shiny object, right? Where you just say, like, oh, let's throw this cool thing or that cool thing. The customers don't care about whatever you just did. So while innovating, you do need to be very mindful that what you're doing is actually going to improve the customer experience, grow your customer base, like ensure customer retention. Like you just need to follow the core principles of any product, right? Um, but yeah, I mean, is I my previous role at Google, well, a couple roles ago, I was focused on virtualization, right? That category of products. So I actually was part of an acquisition of a virtualization company called Cameo. And Cameo was entering the market as everyone was saying the market was dying, right? As in like it was going to be wiped out, ironically by SaaS, because everyone said, look, and I worked in that area for like years, and everyone said like it was always like in 2 years, like this category called virtualization was going to get wiped out. And the fact is, people virtualize apps for various reasons. In some cases, they virtualize them because they don't want to change anything, right? They don't want to mess with the app, right? And so they're going to actually keep that infrastructure,
Mhm.
right? Because there's a reason you don't want to have like stability in your IT environment. Same thing for SaaS. People are not going to rip it out because actually there's lots of value in having stability in your systems, right? Because just,
Yeah. So,
yeah.
so
So
let me, let me add one more thing here,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
People say they are going to replace something. Sometimes I really get frustrated because if something is running, people don't think to find out why it was built, why
Yeah.
it was built in such a way that it is creating value as of now. Yes, you got a new car in the market, you are not going to burn your existing car because it's fulfilling all your requirement. There's a reason you bought something like a small car to do some groceries, right? Now there's a new model in the market. You don't end up keep changing your car every 3 months because your
Yeah.
current car is already fulfilling your requirements. So I think that is what happened with generative AI as well. Actually, if you go a little bit back, that is what happens with big data. When big
Mhm.
data came, everybody says just throw everything into the data lake and it's a product. It'll do everything for you, and it's a failure.
Mhm.
We all know that.
Mhm.
Now
Yeah.
suddenly GenAI comes. They say throw everything into it. It'll do everything. It's a failure, right?
Yeah.
So that is that we don't people don't think whenever new tool comes, people don't think what is another example of in data warehousing on lakehouse or data modeling. People says we don't need data modeling.
Hmm.
So that really frustrate me because actually, okay, I think it's it has become a joke, right? We even like person like me who is in data industry for last 20 years, I worked only on 7, 8 data modeling technique. So the other day, someone was saying that we don't need data modeling. So I start creating a deck on data modeling. I came
Hmm.
to know there are 33 types of data modeling techniques. 33
Wow.
types of data modeling techniques. So
Wow. Okay.
even when you're speaking and you are writing something that is a business, one of the business technique to model something, which
Right.
can be information modeling, which can be business modeling. So when people think about data modeling, maybe they are just like me who has worked 5, 6 data modeling technique. And when something new comes, they say, hey, we can completely replace data modeling. So because they do not know more than 6 techniques,
Mm-hmm.
right? That is where they say we can completely replace it, but actually they are not replacing it. Example
Hmm.
again, I'm putting it that data modeling is not replaceable because there are everything is data modeling. You
Yeah.
convert anything into a way that business want to extract. It's one of a data modeling technique. I think same goes for every new tool comes in. When they say we want to, wipe out existing technology, they need to understand why this existing technology was there. I think that should be a starting point. What do you think?
Yeah, 100%. And like data modeling is again more relevant than ever. It's like it's super relevant to
Well,
Gen AI. Like if you don't figure that out, then you'll have all sorts of problem with the context. As an individual user, we see when we try to load up documents into ChatGPT that like we can see that we need to give it data for it to be accurate. And like you scaled it up to an enterprise level, like your data modeling becomes way more important because like now any problem you're going to have with generative AI in general will be about often about the training data. And so if it's training on your data and your data is a complete mess, that's just absolute garbage, you can expect it to amplify all your data problems. So data modeling becomes even more important. I did not know there are 33 different
yeah,
approaches.
let me add into it, right? Because
Yeah.
people think when you talk about structured tables like row and column, we have databases, right? People think data modeling is there. Actually, there are data modeling for unstructured data as well,
Yeah.
which we call it taxonomies and ontologies, right?
Yep.
So ontologies are there. You throw text into it, it has to go through the ontology. Ontology is also a data modeling technique. So
Yep.
when people say we don't need because it's a text, we just throw. But they need to understand banking text is a different thing, telco text is a different thing, medicine text is a different thing. So yeah, maybe they don't
Yeah.
understand it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And actually, I think very interesting point because now it made me think of something else in terms of like taxonomy and ontology. Uh, Now that all of our text is going into Gen AI, how we describe a thing internally at a company matters so much more
Yes.
because like you can work it out between each other. Like what a great example in a previous company, a previous role, um, the concept of an MVP. People didn't have a unified definition of an MVP. So they were talking about MVP. Well, we'll do this at MVP. Needs to be after MVP or before MVP. And like they were talking, and like if I individually met the people on the teams, like when you say MVP, what do you mean?
What do you mean?
And
Yes.
they had completely different definitions. And then 2 weeks later, in the same meeting, the same people were using MVP in a different way than they described to me. So like their shift, their understanding of what that thing meant was changing in
Yeah.
real time because as they're kind of recalibrating what they thought that meant. And so if that is happening in human conversations, and that's happening like in docs that we put into a system, and there's no taxonomy, there's no ontology that's very, very crisp on
Hmm.
all the definitions, you will expect it to spit something out that five different people reading the same output will interpret differently. And then the fact that it's probabilistic, it'll be the output will not be always consistent.
Yeah.
So now like having a really tight definition on all the words that really matter to your business now becomes even more important. Because maybe you didn't have like a system that was capturing the word MVP, but now you do. Because
Yeah.
anything that's text is in your system. So the data modeling problem now becomes more like a bunch of humans need to get in a room and all agree what is like let's list out the 20, 30, 40, 50 terms about our
Yeah.
business that really matter when we talk about things that we do and when we're going to do them and how we're going to do them.
Yeah.
And so it turns into this uber challenge that some companies have never even thought was a thing that was a problem. And I've tried to actually solve that problem and everyone's like, no, we're all fine. We know what we're talking about. I was like, do we though? So yeah,
So,
I
so
think
we have a time check of 4 minutes. So
yeah,
let's try to wind up this thing. I think the discussion was very good discussion,
me
and
too.
I think it's a pleasure to meet someone who is in data industry for so long. A lot of people jump into it, but some people do complain me offline that Mustafa, sometimes we go really technical and we don't understand. So I didn't feel that challenge with you. It was a good discussion, and
Yeah,
it was
me
our
too.
first one. I hope we can have more.
I would
And
love to. I
yeah,
really enjoy talking to you.
we can brainstorm a lot of things. We can
Yeah,
learn from each other. I will
yeah,
learn more.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I learned. I have so much to learn about data modeling. And next time I'm going to give you a lot more space for you to talk. 'Cause I think I need to go to a couple of Mustafa courses.
Nah,
You're also written many books, so I've got two in my list right now to read. So yeah, I really enjoy the conversation too.
yeah, when you start about to buy the I am Datapedia, do let me know. Don't click buy. I will upload
Okay.
the latest version for you to download.
Oh, nice. All
Yeah.
right. Cool.
Have a
Well,
good
I got to get to my first two books first.
okay.
And yeah, yeah.
Okay.
It's right behind the Stephen King book that I'm about to wrap up.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you, Richard. Again, pleasure talking to you. See
All
you
right.
and have a
Great
nice
to
day.
talk to you too,
Yeah.
Mustafa. Thanks so much.
Bye bye.